This is an art collage novel video. I made this series so you guys can experience the story faster. The video will focus on the character's psychology, the images are for illustration purposes only. Surprised look appeared on Zhang Xiaotian's face. Looking at the Golden Soul Slave's extremely eager expression, he turned to Yunxiao in shock, looked him up and down, and then slowly said, "The Soul Slaves have already searched the area. There are more than 10 powerful souls moving around within 1,000 miles. But the strongest soul among them is still you." His eyes flickered as he stared coldly at Yunxiao, as if he wanted to see through the latter. Yunxiao felt that his throat was a little dry. He swallowed a mouthful of saliva and calmed himself down. With a sneer on his face, he said, "Hurry up and tell your soul slave to turn his head away." This young master's hair is standing on end under his gaze. Believe it or not, I'll make sure it's consigned to eternal damnation and never to reincarnation. No matter how strong his heart was, being stared at by that strange thing so greedily, anyone would feel numb in their heart. If he had the strength of his previous life, he would probably annihilate these people on the spot with a sword. Zhang Xiaotian revealed a cold smile and said, "If I'm not wrong, you should be an alchemist, and at least a 6th tier one at that. Otherwise, my soul slave would never show such a greedy look." He gently made a hand seal, and the Golden Soul Slave revealed an unwilling expression as it was pulled back into the soul-devouring flag. Yunxiao's eyes turned cold as he said, "If you have any ideas about me, that will be the most regretful thing in your life." Zhang Xiaotian's heart trembled. He didn't know why, but even with his Dao heart and martial essence, he felt a chill in his heart and body when he heard these words. Even some of the martial emperor elders in the sect had never experienced such a feeling before. He suppressed the fear in his heart and forced himself to put on an arrogant and unyielding look. "Humph. He's just a 6th tier alchemist. I'm not interested in him. Those 10 or so souls aren't very strong, and they don't seem to be from the demon clan that you mentioned. However, there are 2 powerful souls together. One of them is extremely violent and seems to be a high-level demonic beast, while the other is much calmer." Everyone in the Temple of Holy Fire was shocked. They could even sense the nature of the soul. The cultivation method of the Soul Devourer clan was truly terrifying, extremely terrifying. The 7 superforces were indeed extraordinary and well-deserved. Yunxiao pondered for a moment and said, "They should be Shenfeng, the leader of the skeleton mercenaries, and the 9-winged spirit snake bird. The other souls should be from the 4 extremes sect. Where are the 2 martial sovereigns and the demon clan members?" Zhang Xiaotian's eyes narrowed and he hesitated. "There's rule force around a martial sovereign. My soul slave's level isn't high enough, so I can't detect it. In addition, there are several places in the mountain that have restrictive spells, and we can't check the situation inside. I think those great demons might be in those restrictive spells." Everyone's head was a little dizzy from hearing this, and Fengzhu couldn't help but complain, "This king-level master is really F***king abnormal. Not to mention that there's a formation within a formation, even the formation core has a restriction. How the F***ck are we supposed to survive?" "The key must be in those restrictive spells," Yunxiao said with a frown. "I'm afraid the demons are one step ahead of us. The 4 extremes sect has lost the protection of the great demon. Let's capture Tang Jia first." Tang Jia? The eldest young master of the Tang family of the 4 extremes sect? Zhang Xiaotian had also heard of this person's name and frowned. "He's one of them? Why did you capture him?" Yunxiao smiled. "You don't have to ask about that. It will be of great use to you. Lead the way, dear." Zhang Xiaotian didn't ask any more questions. The dozen or so people from the 4 extreme sect were indeed the ones they were most confident in taking down. He could replenish his golden soul slaves, so he naturally wouldn't resist. He took the lead and flew in front while the others followed closely behind. The size of the unaging mountain was still within their visual estimation. After flying for the time it took to brew a cup of tea, they saw many figures flashing about, as if searching the mountain for something. While they were flying, the season in the mountains changed again, from spring to summer. The sun was shining brightly in the sky, and the temperature rose sharply. Who's there? Shan Yongza was the first to notice their presence. With a loud shout that reverberated in a radius of a few miles, all the members of the Four Extremes sect quickly gathered in the center. Tang Jie's pupils constricted as he immediately discovered Yun Xiao and the others in the air. What made him even more afraid was Zhang Xiaotian, who he could not sense the slightest aura from, so there was only one possibility: his strength was far higher than his. Young Master Tang, I haven't seen you for a while. Yun Xiao stepped forward from the void and greeted them with a smile. Tang Jie's expression changed drastically. Without those demons, Shan Yongza, who was the strongest among them, would not be able to restrain them. His heart grew heavy as he said, Li Yun Xiao, although we have some grudges between us, we have no grudges against each other in general. Why don't we turn from enemies into friends and deal with the difficulties before us together? Yun Xiao shook his head and said, it's a good suggestion, but how can I turn a man who goes back on his word like young Master Tang into a friend? Don't forget what you promised me. You haven't fulfilled your promise to eat the Netherworld battleship. Tang Jie's eyes flashed with anger. After he entered the Lightsong woodland, if this person had not been against him all the way, he would not have ended up in this situation. Perhaps he would have already obtained the Yin key and Noah's ship. Now, not only was he trapped in the enchantment of the throne, but even Yin key's whereabouts were also unknown. All of this was caused by the person in front of him. If it wasn't for the fact that he couldn't defeat him now, he would definitely kill him at the first moment. There are no eternal enemies in the world. Young Master Yun Xiao, with my status, I'm definitely worthy of being your friend. Tang Jia swallowed his anger and tried to please the other party, saying, the talk about eating battleships that day was just a joke. You and I can be considered friends if we don't fight. If we continue to fight, it won't be good for either of us. Don't you agree? Child's play? Yun Xiao was stunned. If one day you suddenly say that befriending me is just child's play, then what should I do? Zhang Xiaotian didn't seem to have any trouble and coldly said, why are you talking so much nonsense? This tribulation of the Tang dynasty is yours, the rest is mine. As soon as he finished speaking, he did not wait for Yun Xiao's reply. He spread out the soul-devouring flag in his hand and let it flutter in the wind. A cold and gloomy air spread out, covering the sky and the sun. Although it was a hot summer, a cold wind and chilly air began to appear all over the mountain. The members of the Four Extremes sect felt as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. Even the 7 Stars Marshal Supreme, Shan Yongza, felt a chill run down his spine as he cried out in shock, who are you? I'll be the owner of your soul soon. Zhang Xiaotian sneered. He made a gesture with his hand, and the golden soul slave slowly crawled out of the soul-devouring flag. It drooled and rushed down to the people below. Its eyes were full of green light, and it let out an excited cry. The people from the Four Extremes sect were all scared out of their wits and turned to escape. Don't run. Swear your loyalty to the eldest young master. Die. Shan Yongza roared as he unleashed all his strength. He knew that this was the moment of life and death. If he couldn't win, he wouldn't be able to escape either. Moreover, this was the best time to show his loyalty. As long as he could survive this, he would return to the Four Extremes sect in the future and be Tang Jie's trusted aide. He would not have to risk his life like this anymore. The power of a 7 Stars Marshal Supreme burst out all of a sudden, and the cold chi that filled the sky was immediately pushed up. It warmed the hearts of all the martial artists, and their morale was greatly boosted. Boom boom boom. The dozen or so martial artists attacked at the same time, creating a spectacular scene. They bombarded the golden soul slave, preventing it from coming down. Tang Jia also took out his vermilion bird saber and slashed down with the great void slash. The space directly split into a cross, and its power was not below that of a martial venerable. Zhang Xiaotian's pupils shrank slightly as he stared at the vermilion bird saber in Tang Jie's hand, revealing a surprised expression. The moment the vermilion bird saber appeared, the power of the weapon almost suppressed his soul-devouring banner. Even the golden soul slave revealed a look of fear. 9th-tier mystic artifacts were absolutely rare on the continent. There were only 3 kinds of people in the soul-devouring tribe who could be promoted to an elder and enjoy all kinds of offerings. The first was when their cultivation had advanced to the martial sovereign realm. The second was when the soul-devouring banner that was connected to them had advanced to the 9th tier, and the third was to completely refine a 9th tier mystic artifact. It was impossible to completely refine a 9th tier profound weapon without the cultivation of a martial emperor. Even a martial emperor would find it difficult to completely refine a 9th tier profound weapon, unless he reached the peak of the martial emperor realm. Therefore, the third situation was very rare in the Soul Devourer clan. Most of the elders only had one profound level weapon, which was the soul-devouring banner that they had refined with great care. The soul-devouring banner was refined from the lowest grade, and it was advanced layer by layer. Every disciple of the soul-devouring sect used the rank 1 soul-devouring banner at the beginning. The primary soul inside was also very weak. Only in this way could they be connected to their minds and completely integrate with themselves. When the soul-devouring banner continued to advance, its power would gradually be reflected. However, the soul-devouring banner was not quite the same as ordinary profound level weapons. It relied on the level of the main soul and was much weaker than other profound level weapons of the same level. The only advantage was that after a long period of refining, it had long been completely connected with the mind and could exert 100% of its power. After Zhang Xiaoyan's soul-devouring banner advanced to a 9th tier quality golden soul slave, the full power it displayed was only equivalent to less than 1/3 of a 9th tier profound weapon. But even so, it was still a very terrifying power. This advantage also made the disciples of the Soul Devourer clan much stronger than those of the same rank. In the heavenly martial realm, no one dared to provoke the Soul Devourer clan of the same rank. Just as Yunxiao had said, golden soul slaves were divided into 4 levels: heaven, earth, mystic, and yellow. It was said that only earth-grade golden soul slaves could match the power of a 9th tier mystic artifact with 100% certainty. No one knew how strong a heaven-grade soul slave was. Even Zhang Xiaotian didn't know if they really existed in the Soul Devourer race. Therefore, when Yunxiao said that Huangfu Bie's soul slave was a heaven-grade golden soul slave, he was extremely shocked and suspicious. Now that the vermilion bird saber in Tang Jie's hand had appeared, it directly suppressed his soul-devouring banner in terms of weapon accumulation level, which made Zhang Xiaotian very tempted. If one possessed a 9th grade soul-devouring banner and refined a 9th grade profound armament at the same time, one's combat power would be multiplied. His mind raced as he cast his gaze toward the vermilion bird saber. In Tang Jie's hands, the vermilion bird saber could not even display 5% of its power. It was like a child holding a big ingot. There were no adults around, so how could the surrounding people not be moved? The golden soul slave in the sky was overwhelmed by the attacks and was forced to retreat. The morale of the 4 extreme sects people was getting higher and higher, and they became more and more courageous as the battle progressed. Big brother Yunxiao. Yi Fan frowned and shouted, asking if he should help. Yunxiao's face was as calm as usual. He shook his head and sighed. The human soul is the most powerful when it has 7 emotions and 6 desires. The people of the 4 extremes trading company below have infinite courage from the 7 emotions. The soul devourers call this process of stimulating the soul power of the other party, pouring water. Flood? Yi Fan was stunned and asked in confusion. Some black-hearted vendors put a lot of water into the meat when they slaughtered pigs and sheep to increase the weight of the meat and sell it for more, Yunxiao said. It's the same as the perverts from the Soul Devourer clan. Before taking the soul, stimulate the 7 emotions and 6 desires of the other party, and the power of the absorption will be stronger. This explanation made Yi Fan's scalp tingle. Looking at Zhang Xiaotian's indifferent and proud eyes, his heart was filled with disgust. The water is almost done, we can kill him now. Zhang Xiaotian gently smiled and sent a seal into the soul-devouring flag. The golden soul slave suddenly showed a happy expression. All the attacks were pushed away and couldn't advance any further. The golden soul slave opened its mouth wide, and a large amount of saliva flowed down. It let out a strange kiki sound and suddenly rushed down. Gusts of cold wind swept down from the sky. All of the 4 extreme sex attacks were instantly destroyed. Even Dan Ziyang was shocked to find that they could not put up any resistance against the terrifying laughter of his soul slave. He was so frightened that he fled in a hurry. Whoosh! The long banner danced in the air. A large number of warriors screamed in horror and fell to the ground without any symptoms. Their souls were directly sucked into the golden soul slave's mouth and devoured. The terrifying atmosphere spread. Shan Yang's body turned cold as well. After struggling to hold on for a moment, he felt a chill in his soul. In his shock, he roared repeatedly, wanting to self-destruct to hurt the enemy. Zhang Xiaotian's brows furrowed as he conjured a hand seal. The golden soul slave followed suit and sent a seal into Shan Yang's body. The violent yuan qi was instantly suppressed, and Shan Yangzi felt as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. His soul was extracted and swallowed by the golden soul slave. Arg! Help, help! When Tang Jia saw this terrifying scene, he was so scared that his legs went weak and he fled backward like crazy. Killing someone was as easy as nodding one's head on the ground. Since he was able to reach the Seven Constellations realm, he should have long been aware of his life and death. However, who had ever seen such a thing as eating a human soul alive? Their minds collapsed at once. Kiki. After the golden soul slave devoured Shan Yang's soul, it looked extremely satisfied. It ignored the others who had escaped and ran toward Tang Jia. Yunxiao's face darkened as he shouted. Don't hurt him. Zhang Xiaotian revealed a cold smile and said, I know what I'm doing. He changed the spell in his hand, and the golden soul slave seemed to be suppressed. It looked unhappy, but it was still extremely obedient. It stretched out a faintly discernible hand and grabbed Tang Jia. Tang Jia was so frightened that he fell to the ground. His legs were trembling so badly that he did not even have the strength to run. Shan Yang's soul had been drawn out by such a grab. Beep! A strange cry came from the sky, and a ray of light cut down from the distance. It was a dagger, which directly cut the sky open, and its target was the soul slave's glabella. The soul slave's face turned blank. He quickly retracted his hand and retreated to avoid the dagger's attack. The dagger disappeared into the mountain in a flash. It was extremely sharp. Immediately after, a figure appeared in front of Tang Jia. The wind from his palm condensed and slapped toward the soul slave. The surrounding forces gathered and shook the cold air away, suppressing the golden soul slave. This person was Shen Feng. The power of a 9-stars martial supreme on his body pressed down, and the soul-devouring banner was suppressed by the domain in the air, rapidly shrinking. Sir Shen, save me, woo-woo. Tang Jia had just returned from the gates of hell. He was so scared that his entire body went weak. He crawled over and hugged Shen Feng's thigh as he started crying. This time, he was really scared out of his wits as his face was covered in tears and snot. Shen Feng frowned as he saw Tang Jia wiping his snot on his leg. A look of disgust flashed across his face. He gently pushed Tang Jia away with his foot and said, Young Master Tang, everything is fine now. With this senior here, no one can hurt you. Only then did Tang Jia nod his head, his gratitude overflowing in words. Humph, no one can hurt him? Do you think you're a martial supreme? Zhang Xiaotian's face turned cold. He grabbed the soul-devouring banner in the air and flew down to Shen Feng. The entire sky turned cold as he flew. The Soul Devourer clan? Shen Feng suddenly let out a long howl towards the sky, his voice reaching the 9 heavens. A surge of demonic power approached from far, and the shadow of the 9-winged spirit snakebird continued to expand. In a few moments, it came down from the sky and reached out its sharp claws to grab Zhang Xiaotian. Zhang Xiaotian felt the space around him tighten as he was locked in the air. The majestic demonic power of the 8th Order monster beast was no less than his. He spun the streamer in his hand a few times and released the golden soul slaves. They turned into ghosts and bit at the demonic chi. The gloomy and cold chi field immediately swallowed the demonic chi. The 9-winged spirit snakebird sensed the danger and changed its direction in the air, circling to the right. Zhang Xiaotian's face turned cold and the seal in his hand changed. The soul slave seemed to have identified the monster beast and chased after it, chasing it everywhere in the air. Shen Feng's expression darkened. He had spent a great deal of effort to tame this nine-winged spirit snake bird, and he was well aware of its strength. However, he did not expect that it would be suppressed by the soul-devouring banner. He also soared into the sky and sent a palm strike toward Zhang Xiaotian. Zhang Xiaotian's eyes flashed with a cold light. He directly regarded Shenfeng as a tonic. He sneered and pointed his finger. The strong wind made a sharp chi-chi sound, trying to break his palm power. Both of them were 9-star martial supremes, and they had used all their strength in this attack. Shenfeng's palm force was extremely yang and firm, and it had actually devoured the other party's finger force directly. Without losing any momentum, it pressed down layer by layer like a surging river. The power was endless, and each wave was stronger than the previous. Zhang Xiaotian was shocked. The soul-devouring clan had spent a lot of time and effort on refining the soul-devouring banner, so their own strength was inferior to those of the same rank. Now that the soul-devouring banner was being held back by the nine-winged spirit snake bird, he was no match for Shenfeng at all. After being destroyed by a finger, he had the intention to retreat. Li Yunxiao, what are you waiting for? Are you just standing there and watching? Zhang Xiaotian angrily shouted at the people in the distance. He flashed a few phantoms in the air, retrieved the soul-devouring banner, and retreated. After the nine-winged spirit snake bird shook off the soul-devouring banner, it circled around for a few moments before returning to Shenfeng's side. The man and the demon, both peak martial venerables, stood side by side, staring at Yunxiao and the others. Yunxiao smiled wryly. Although he could control part of the rules of spring, it was still very limited. He could kill a 1-star martial supreme by surprise, but it was not enough to deal with Shenfeng and the nine-winged spirit snake bird. There was no need to mention the people from the Temple of Holy Fire. With 2 2-star martial venerables, it would be a miracle if they could defeat a 3-star martial venerable if they joined forces. The remaining martial emperors were just cannon fodder. In other words, among them, the only one who could be brought out was Zhang Xiaotian. Everyone found that the situation had suddenly reversed. Tang Jia also discovered the change in the situation and hurriedly rushed to the sky. He stood behind Shenfeng and said, "Sir Shin, quickly kill them. Now is the best chance, or else there will be endless trouble." Shenfeng furrowed his brows and looked troubled. It was not impossible for him to kill these people with his strength, but he would be severely injured. The environment was mysterious and unpredictable, and the more strength he had left, the more chances he had of getting out. Cough cough. Yunxiao coughed twice, then stood up and said, "This must be Sir Shenfeng from the skeleton mercenary group. It's an honor to meet you. I admire you. Why the hell are you getting involved in the matter between us and the Four Extremes sect?" Shenfeng was taken aback, thinking that Yunxiao was begging to spare. His eyes narrowed slightly. The man in front of him was someone Mr. Yu wanted to kill at the cost of his life. Although he could not see any threat from Yunxiao, he had always respected Mr. Yu's words. His eyes began to show a strong killing intent. "Humph, you're not qualified to kill me." Yunxiao seemed to have seen through his killing intent as he shouted coldly. He could not show weakness now, or Shenfeng would really attack him. He had to suppress his aura, so that the other party would not give up after weighing the pros and cons. "Even if it's you, he was defeated by me. How much stronger can you be than him? If it wasn't for the fact that this place is too dangerous and I don't want to waste my energy with you, the two of you and this beast would have died here." A hint of hesitation flashed in Shenfeng's eyes, but he eventually gave up and said, "The more afraid you are, the more you like to boost your courage. I don't like to be tricked by you, but you're right. This place is too dangerous, and I don't want to waste my energy with you. Let's talk about it after we leave this barrier." Shen Darren Lang Lang. Tang Jia was extremely anxious. He wanted to persuade Shenfeng, but when he saw the determination and unhappiness on the other party's face, he immediately shut up. If the other party was unhappy and left him alone, then he would really be dead. As long as they could get out of here, they could mobilize the experts of the Four Extremes sect, and they could kill Yunxiao. Yunxiao had been put on his must-kill list, and Zhang Xiaotian had been forgotten by him. The main reason was that Zhang Xiaotian was a member of the Soul Devourer clan, and even the Four Extremes sect could not afford to offend him. So, they could only use the hatred transfer technique to shift all the hatred onto Yunxiao. Killing him alone would be enough to vent their hatred. Yunxiao smiled, ignoring Tang Jie's murderous look. He turned to Shinfeng and said, Sir Shin has entered the Unaging Mountain for a long time, did you discover anything?